Hey, I'm Brody.
Hey, I'm Corey.
And we're gonna be honest. Today we're gonna be watching Astro Boy. We'll see how it goes. What do you think?
I don't know. I've never heard of this movie, but I'm interested to see what it has in store for us.
I think it came out in 2009 and it's based on a Japanese comic book.
Yeah, I think there were some games too, I know.
Some games? Okay. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I mean, I obviously love animation, so hopefully this one will knock our socks off.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Alright, see you guys afterwards.
See ya.
Alrighty, so we just finished watching Astro Boy, and I'm just going to come out straight and say it. That was probably one of the worst animated films I've ever seen. It was lazy, there was no plot. It's like they just threw it together, and they didn't even care about it.
I have never seen so little passion put into a film. And I mean that 100%. This is the laziest, most predictable, most appalling 3D animated film I have ever had to sit through.
Now, it would be one thing if, it was like a little kid movie and they, it didn't matter if they had little screw-ups because the little kids would obviously miss it, or if it was, meant to be bad on purpose. But this film, you can tell it was for, more like an 8 to 10 to 12 kind of age group.
And this is, I think, supposed to be on par with, Pixar and DreamWorks films.
Yeah.
Where, you're expected to be able to take your kids to this. It's supposed to be a family movie. It's supposed to be a movie parents can, find the hinted at, kind of adult jokes here and there and still get a laugh out of it while they take their kids to go see it because their kids want to see it. But, oh God, did they do this the wrong way.
This movie, they tried. You can tell they put in the effort. They wanted it to be not a serious movie, because it is obviously a kid's movie, but you can tell it was not on purposely bad. It was actually made by Imagi Studios, I-M-A-G-I Studios, which is a Japanese company, I believe. They're the same makers as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that came out in 2007, Highlander, I've never heard of that, and Digital Monsters X Evolution, something that only came out in Japan. And something I thought that was worth noting was they actually came out with the Legend of Zelda series that was canceled.
I thought it was a film.
Was it a film?
Yeah, I think it was a Legend of Zelda movie that they were trying to make.
But it was actually canceled. So, was it canceled because they were so bad, or was it canceled because of other problems?
Yeah, I tried looking into it, and I couldn't find any specific information, but if we find something, we'll definitely put it in the description.
This movie did come out in 2009. It was, I don't know how long it was in theaters for, but I don't remember hearing too much about it. I remember it, like trailers and stuff like that, but I don't remember it being something that everybody was coming to school being like, "Hey man, have you seen Astro Boy?" It really just kind of swept under the rug.
He's the one who pointed this film out to me. He had seen it prior, and I had never really heard of it. I had heard of the cartoon because I knew that I recognized the name Astro Boy, and I knew I had seen it places, but I knew absolutely nothing about it.
I saw parts of it. I didn't see it all the way through when we first started watching it. From what I saw, I was half paying attention the first time I saw it, and I didn't really pick up on the nuances of, its problems. It looked like an interesting movie from just a quick glance that I was making, but going back and rewatching it, I'm shocked that I missed any of it. Alright, so next we're going to be talking about the character designs of Toby, or Astro Boy, who was the main character of the movie. What did you think about the character designs?
I'll be quite honest, it was pretty bad. There were a lot of flaws with his character, and I'm not talking about, personal stuff about who he was. I'm talking about just basic things like his appearance and, the way he was literally designed, the way he was modeled, the way that the way he looked in the film overall was just, there's something quite off about it. It almost looked like, in terms of his model, when they actually modeled him, it looked like he was developed in a separate software from any other character in the film. He stood out. It was like
if you looked at every character next to him, and we'll actually put up a picture on screen, every other character has really skinny arms, really tiny hands, their legs are tiny, their bodies are tiny.
And longer fingers.
Long fingers. And then you look at Astro Boy, and he's, his forearms are ginormous, his hands are fat, his character itself just looks like it was modeled in a different studio.
Yeah, by completely different people who had never even, looked at this movie. They didn't even know what any of the other characters looked like. They just modeled him, based on some sketch or something. And it was really astounding because like his biceps were skinny, but then as his arms got down, they got thicker and thicker. So proportionally, he looked absurd.
His fist was almost as big as his head.
He had these giant hands and these short, stubby fingers, which were, the complete opposite of all of the other characters around him. And when you do the character side-by-side views, which this film likes to do, it just looks so weird. They just don't look like they're in the same movie. They don't look like they belong in the same universe.
And you may think, oh, well, that's just that because he's a robot. That's how they made him. They made him with big arms and things like that. No, because if you go back to the beginning of the movie where he's still human, it's a significant, he is still that way. He still stands out from all the other kids. Granted, he looks a little bit more human because his hair is more, you can see the tufts of hair and everything. But he still has the weird proportions. His hair, his hair was shiny the entire time, obviously, which looks like a piece of metal. His whole body looks like metal, but no one was able to distinguish that he was a robot, which didn't make any sense to me. Because if you bump up to him, you should know, that his skin didn't give. There's no flesh there. It's just metal. He's shiny. His hair looks fake.
Can we talk about the fact that he also walked around the entire film after he was a robot shirtless and had no nipples?
Yeah. So after he first gets made, he wakes up in a lab with boxers on and boots, these red boots. And it doesn't just dawn on him when he wakes up or anything like that why am I in a lab with boxers on and boots? He just completely glosses over that, and then he doesn't even wonder why I can't take these boots off, why can't I, move my boxers at all. He doesn't realize that he's a robot until 15 minutes into him being a robot. Can we talk more about his hair for a second? Yeah, so his hair, something that I noticed right off the bat, and I didn't know if I was just, watching it wrong or if I wasn't really paying attention, but his hair was moving, right? It was switching sides.
Yeah, so when they modeled his character, it almost seems like they had two different models. They had one where his hair had two, spikes going in certain directions, but then throughout the film, interspersed are scenes where they used a completely different model, and his hair switches sides. It's really bizarre. It's the laziest thing I've ever seen.
Well, it may not even be that they use a different model. Maybe they're just pressing this flip horizontally button, and they're not paying attention to the previous scene. Because there's distinct scenes in there where, one time his hair will be this direction, and then the immediate next scene it's this way, and then it switches right back to that way.
Well, that could be it too. Maybe it isn't a separate model and they're just...
But it's not just in one part of the movie at the beginning. It's throughout the entire movie.
The whole thing. It's a consistent issue. Yeah.
If they had watched it for, consistency or anything before publishing the movie, they would have noticed it. But it seems like they either didn't notice it because they weren't paying attention when they watched back the movie, or they noticed it and they didn't care enough as the animating company to fix it.
Which, judging by, the background of this studio, I would tend to think that that's probably what ended up happening. And I know that with, big budgeted productions, it can be very hard to, step outside of a certain deadline, which may be true. If your entire film has fundamentally simple but fundamentally broken things about it, you just don't release it. You just don't. You step back.
You have to go fix it.
You either take the time to fix it and then release it the right way, or you just say, you know what, we just can't release it. You don't release it anyway. It's a disservice to people because it also, it takes their money. That's a really big problem.
It almost seems like they just pumped out the movie and didn't care enough about the viewers. They were just trying to get the money out of the movie. Other parts of the character design that just really aggravated me is at one point he lifts up his arms and his arms turn into a gun.
Oh, this is towards the end of the movie too.
Yeah, his arms, he's got gun arms, he's got rockets for feet, and at one point he has machine guns come out of his butt. If you're rebuilding your son, because that's what the main scientist did, he rebuilt his son who died, you're rebuilding your sun, you don't use rocket engines for feet or put machine guns in the butt or in the hand.
Yeah, there's a lot of flawed logic in this film with, the concept. And maybe you're just supposed to, shrug your shoulders and say, oh, well, maybe it's, the energy that's inside him. Because we'll get to that in terms of the plot, but there's basically an energy source that, makes him who he is. And he's, the most advanced technology, basically.
But it's not like he was a transformer or anything.
Right. It's not
like even when they show him being built, the main scientist walks over with 2 rockets, sets it down, a laser cuts off part of the rockets, and then it kind of pans up, and you can see the rest of the body, and it's just a bunch of random pieces of metal. You don't see any guns, you don't see anything like that, and then it just has a scanner that kind of goes over it, and suddenly he's completely built.
Yeah, it's very strange. And maybe you're supposed to think, oh, like it's a
3D model or something like that, but it just doesn't make sense. And then he gets picked up by some weird tubing and takes up 20 feet in the air where everything explodes because the power source is too strong. And then he falls on the ground, destroys the lab, and wakes up, and he's like, oh, hey, I guess I'm awake now. And then the dad just okay, let's go home, and carries him off. And he's just bye, other scientist.
Yeah, it's like he has no recollection that, first of all, anything even happened to him. He has no self-awareness, it seems. It's like he doesn't know why he looks the way he does or why he's missing clothes, but he doesn't care. He doesn't even say anything about it. He doesn't even question it. And not to mention that the boots don't even come off his feet. They are his feet. I'd think that if I looked down and realized that my shoes were permanently attached to my body, I would have some questions, right?
Yeah, because it's not immediately after he wakes up that he realizes he's a robot. There's a good several scenes where he just goes through, he eats food, he does homework, he just doesn't realize he's a robot, which doesn't make any sense to me, because it's not like he had fleshy body parts, he was solid metal the entire film. And to get his memories in, his dad takes a piece of hair from the dead son and puts it into some scanner for DNA, and suddenly all his memories start popping up on screens. I know this may be the future, but the year they gave was not too far out. And as far as I know, your memories are stored in your brain, not in your DNA.
Yeah, really strange there. I don't.
But I'm not a scientist. I don't
know. But yeah,
let's talk about just really fast. The only other character design in the film that I saw that was worth mentioning was the face masks on the Marines that are in the movie. The main bad guy, has these kind of Marines, these soldiers. They're all faceless, wearing the same outfit, and they've got these face masks on. And at one point, they're chasing him throughout the city, and when they're confused, a bunch of question marks pop up. When they're shocked, a bunch of exclamation points. At one point, one falls out, he catches it, and he was falling to his death, so he was scared, and it says automatic release of bodily fluids. Why would your mask say that? How would your mask know any of that? What's the purpose of that? To let your enemy know that you're scared, shocked, confused? It doesn't make sense.
It's an interesting idea to use pictures to represent emotion, like an emoji or an emoticon. I kind of like that, but then when it popped up with the words, it was very bizarre. And I don't believe you see that anywhere else in the film.
Oh, it's that one spot.
There's only the one scene in it. I get that they were trying to get a cheap laugh, but it wasn't funny, and at the same time, it doesn't make any sense.
To the plot. So we kind of went over a little bit of the plot already. But let's skip down to just some main points. Basically, the main bad guy is the president of this film, who I guess wants re-election, so he thinks that by causing a war with the surface, because they're in a floating city, so he thinks by causing war with the rest of the Earth that suddenly he's gonna get re-elected. And something else that didn't really make sense is, why is there only one floating city? What happened and this wasn't even that big of a city. It was smaller than New York. What happened to is everybody else just still on Earth suffering, and just one city rose up and is okay, we're gonna be better than everybody else and not care? Or was there some kind of event, a war or something that led to that?
That's the thing, they don't really explain a whole lot of why the world is the way it is. Oh, and that's something that I wanted to mention. So the beginning of the film, the background that they do give is made in like some super cheap 2D studio.
Well, I kind of understand that because it was like he was in class watching an educational video. I think that was kind of clever, kind of trying to introduce some background through an instructional video like that. But
see, I didn't like that because realistically speaking, I feel like if we were to watch something like that in today's society, it would be like actors and there would be like a specific, people representing those things and talking about it, not, some animated cartoon that doesn't really fit the theme of the rest of the film.
Yeah.
And it really threw me for a loop when the very beginning was 3D and then it cut to like this like 2D video and I'm like, wait, what?
So just some highlights of things we saw go wrong. They had like some very quick plot developments where his dad is like, oh, I'm going to spend several days building this robot, and then after one afternoon of giving him a chance to be Toby, he's like, I don't want you anymore, take him away, get rid of him. That was very quick and to the point, like they were just trying to move along the story, and that they didn't care. They just needed a reason to kick him out.
The pacing in this movie is horrendous. And I think that's like a big reason. It feels rushed and it feels lazy. There's one scene, and it's the kid's death scene. Just kind of, snowballs throughout the rest of the film. When he dies, he's basically vaporized, right? But the only thing that's left is his hat.
Yeah.
Which makes no sense. So the only reason that the hat seems to exist still is so that they can take the hair from the hat. The only reason they kept the hat around was,
I guess they could say, yes, we got it from there for the DNA. Skipping ahead to when he finds out he is a robot, he doesn't immediately go, oh crap, I'm a robot. He's like, oh man, I can fly, I've got rockets in my feet. And after falling, barely being able to fly at all, suddenly he's doing loop-de-loops around trains, he's flying up around clouds, he's, just flying all over the city like an expert. And at one point, he even digs through a mountain. There's a mountain on the floating city, for whatever reason, and he digs through the mountain.
Yeah, like just tunnels through the mountain.
Straight through the side.
Straight through. Yeah. Gravity has no effect, apparently. It doesn't, crush him to death because he's drilling through it. And then he goes straight up. Somehow.
Just with his fists. He just punches through it like no big deal.
That's another big indicator that the pacing was off, is because, there's so many scenes that,
they were trying to get him to learn his powers too fast.
Right, and then once they do, then later on, they establish certain things that just don't make sense. It almost makes me wonder if, there was, a bunch of major editing that they did at the very end, and that's why there's so many problems with the plot, and why the pacing is so off.
Maybe they made it too long and then realized and tried to cut it down, and by doing so, they made it feed through. Skipping ahead to the very end of the movie, there's a big fight between the president who gets absorbed by the robot, which also doesn't make sense. Why didn't Toby just get absorbed at the beginning instead of vaporized? But whatever. He's this big robot who's destroying the city now. I don't know how he thinks that destroying the city is going to help him become re-elected the president by destroying everything. But if you've seen Batman vs. Superman, the amount of destruction in this movie is equal to that. The entire city's destroyed. Thousands of people would be dead. The city's in ruins. It actually falls out of the sky and lands back on the surface at one point. Even when he saves the day from the president, the monster, and the robot, there's nothing to go back to. The city's still destroyed, but everybody's still like, woo, it's all over.
And at the end of the movie, there's maybe a group of 100 people or something. That's all that's left, basically. And the entire city's destroyed.
Well, I know we're skipping over a lot of the plot holes. We're just trying to hit on the main points and kind of get through this because there is just so much we could go on about. Moving on from the plot to lack of reason. They didn't really explain these kind of aspects. Something that really stuck out to me was the robot that ends up bringing him back to life at the very end. He originally gives life to through a compartment on his chest that they have the energy orb in. Up until this point, we're following him the entire movie. He doesn't realize that there's a compartment here. He doesn't realize he has the orb. He doesn't realize the orb even exists. Nowhere in the movie does it show it. And then suddenly he brings the robot to life by just lifting up his shirt, opening the compartment, and going, okay, and letting the power just go through the air to it.
Like he knew that it was there, but he also didn't. Because if he knew it was there... Mm-hmm. Either they didn't show that he had known that it was there, or, that completely goes against the whole idea that he didn't know he was a robot at the beginning of the movie. Because if he didn't know he was a robot, how did he all of a sudden, a few scenes later, know that this compartment was there with a blue orb inside of him?
Yeah.
And he just didn't question it.
Something that doesn't make sense to me. He does it through his chest, But then later on in the movie, he uses his finger to bring a phone back to life, and then later on at the end of the movie, the robot he brought to life uses its finger to bring him back to life and actually lifts him up in the air with it. He's floating there with all this energy going into him, and then he puts him back down.